Welcome to the deep dive. We know you want to get straight to the core of things, understand them quickly but thoroughly. That's what we do here.
And today, we're really jumping into a compelling, um, quite dramatic narrative from the Bible.
Yeah, the story of Jehu in 2 Kings chapter 9.
Exactly. It's set in ancient Israel, a really turbulent time under King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Think a widespread idolatry, injustice. Not a great situation.
Right. And we've got the source text, excerpts from 2 Kings 9, which is great. Plus, you've brought some material to help us, connect this ancient story to today.
That's the plan, the mission, if you will, is to pull out the key insights from this passage and see what relevance does it hold for us now? How might it even strengthen faith?
Okay, sounds good. So where do we start? The beginning of Jehu's rise.
Let's start with the command itself, the divine mandate. It all kicks off with the prophet Elisha.
Okay.
Elisha gives instructions to a younger prophet, doesn't name him, but tells him to go on a very specific mission.
A secret mission, almost. Go to Ramoth Gilead, find Jehu. He's a military guy, right?
A commander, yes. Find him, take him into a private room.
Pour oil on his head and basically say, God has anointed you king over Israel. Just like that.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Very direct, not a suggestion.
And there's a reason given, a heavy one. It's tied to Ahab and Jezebel.
Absolutely. The message is explicit.
Yeah.
This is to smite the house of Ahab, and importantly, to avenge the blood of the Lord's prophets and servants killed by Jezebel. It's about justice.
Wow. So it's not just regime change. It's presented as divine judgment. The text says the whole house of Ahab will perish.
Yes, the language is quite stark. It talks about cutting off every single male descendant, basically wiping the slate clean, similar to judgments mentioned earlier in Israel's history.
And that specific chilling prophecy about Jezebel herself, dogs eating her in Jezreel, no burial.
A really grim forecast.
Yeah.
And what stands out is this young prophet's obedience. He just goes, no questions asked, apparently. He finds Jehu and delivers the message.
Which brings us to Jehu himself. He's sitting with his fellow captains. This prophet shows up, asks for him privately. What must that have been like?
Probably confusing. Maybe a bit suspicious. A strange man wanting a secret meeting in a military camp.
Yeah, you can see why. And when Jehu comes back out, the other captains are like, what was that about? Why did this mad fellow come to you?
Right, mad fellow. It sounds dismissive, doesn't it?
Totally. Like they didn't take the prophet seriously at all.
Maybe they were wary of anything disrupting the military order, or perhaps prophets weren't always, viewed favorably by the military brass. Hard to say for sure.
And Jehu's first response is kind of cagey. You know the type, you know what they talk about, trying to brush it off.
Yeah, maybe testing the waters,
Yeah.
seeing how they'd react before dropping the bombshell.
But they push him, no, tell us. And then he does. He says, thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel.
And the reaction is instant.
Right. No debate, no hesitation. Why so quick? Was it just the divine message? Or maybe were they ready for a change anyway?
That's a great question. It's very possible there was already significant discontent with King Joram, with Jezebel's influence lingering. Maybe Jehu was respected. The divine word could have been the spark they needed.
It really seems like it. They immediately throw down their cloaks on the stairs for him, a sign of royalty, blow the trumpets, and just declare Jehu is king.
An instant coup, basically. Shows how fast things can shift, especially with that kind of, perceived divine backing.
Okay, so Jehu's king, at least according to his captains. But the actual king, Joram, is still alive, though wounded, in Jezreel. Jehu needs to act fast.
Yes, his first move is strategic. Keep this quiet. Don't let word get back to Jezreel before he does. He needs the element of surprise.
And then we get that dramatic scene with the watchman on the tower. He sees Jehu's company approaching.
And he notices the driving. The driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously.
That detail really paints a picture. Furious driving. Tells you something about Jehu's personality, maybe? His determination?
It certainly suggests intensity, purposefulness. He's not meandering.
So King Joram sends out a messenger. Is it peace? Jehu basically says, what's peace got to do with you? Get behind me.
Doesn't sound very peaceful.
Not at all. He sends a second messenger, same result. Jehu just absorbs them into his company. Joram must be getting really nervous now.
You'd think so. So finally, Joram himself decides to ride out, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, who is visiting, goes with him.
And they meet Jehu. The text makes a point of saying where they meet. In the field that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite.
Yes. That's crucial. Naboth, the man Ahab and Jezebel had murdered to steal his vineyard. Meeting there is dripping with irony and, well, foreshadowing. Justice circling back.
Joram asks the question again. Is it peace, Jehu?
And Jehu lets him have it. No peace, he says, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many.
Wow. He lays it right at Jezebel's feet, blames her influence, her idolatry.
It's a direct accusation. He's framing his rebellion as a necessary judgment. And then action. Swift, brutal action.
He draws his bow, shoots Joram right through the heart, kills him instantly.
No hesitation. And then he tells his captain, Bidkar, to throw Joram's body into Naboth's field.
Explicitly referencing God's earlier prophecy against Ahab for Naboth's murder. It's like he's saying, see? This was foretold. This is justice.
The narrative really emphasizes that connection. It ties the current events directly back to past sins and divine judgment. And Ahaziah tries to flee, but Jehu orders his men to strike him too, and he dies later.
So 2 kings down, Jehu heads straight for Jezreel, now for Jezebel herself.
Her reaction is memorable. She hears Jehu's arrived. What does she do?
She doesn't panic or flee or plead. She puts on makeup, does her hair, and looks out the window. What's that about? Defiance. Dignity.
It's debated. Maybe trying to maintain her queenly status, maybe a final act of defiance, perhaps even trying to, use her presence or look one last time. It's hard to be certain, but it's definitely not fear.
And she taunts him, calls down, had Zimri peace who slew his master, comparing him to another assassin king.
Yeah, trying to undermine him, call him a traitor right from the start. But Jehu doesn't engage with the taunt.
No, he looks up and shouts, "Who is on my side? Who?" He's looking for allies inside the palace.
And a couple of eunuchs look out, officials within her own household.
His command is chilling. Throw her down.
And they do. Just like that. They obey Jehu.
The description is brutal. Her blood splatters. The horses trample her. It's incredibly violent.
A graphic end. And later, Jehu, maybe feeling a twinge of protocol, says, "Go, see now this cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter."
Right, a nod to her former status. But when they go,
they find almost nothing left. Just the skull, the feet, the palms of her hands.
Exactly as Elijah the prophet had foretold. The dogs had eaten her in the portion of Jezreel.
The story hammers home that point. God's word, as spoken by the prophet, was fulfilled to the letter.
Okay, wow. That is one intense, violent, dramatic story full of judgment, prophecy, swift action. So how do we even begin to unpack this for today? For our lives, for faith? It feels pretty far removed sometimes.
It does, and we have to be careful not to just, map it directly onto modern situations. But there are definitely themes that resonate.
Like what? What's the first thing that jumps out?
Well, the whole theme of justice, divine justice. The story presents God as ultimately holding people accountable, especially those in power, for injustice, for idolatry, for shedding innocent blood.
Right. Even if it takes time, the narrative suggests accountability comes.
Exactly. And in a world where we see a lot of injustice that seems to go unpunished, that idea of ultimate accountability, it can offer a strange kind of hope. It reinforces faith in a moral order, in a God who cares about justice.
So it's a reminder that things aren't necessarily as they seem on the surface long term.
Perhaps. Another big takeaway for me is how God uses, imperfect people. Jehu wasn't necessarily a perfect guy. He was zealous, maybe even ruthless.
Yeah, the furious driving and the quick violence.
Right. But according to the text, God used him for a specific purpose. And that can be quite encouraging for us. It suggests God can work through ordinary, flawed human beings. We don't have to be perfect to have a purpose or to be used for good. That can really strengthen faith. Knowing our flaws don't automatically disqualify us.
That's a helpful perspective, that perfection isn't the prerequisite for usefulness in a larger plan.
Definitely. And then there's the clear theme of consequences. Ahab and Jezebel's actions, their pride, their cruelty, their promotion of idolatry, had devastating long-term consequences for their entire family.
It's a stark warning, isn't it? About how we live, the choices we make.
It really is. It pushes us to think about the impact of our actions, about things like pride versus humility. Jezebel's defiance right up to the end serves as a cautionary tale against that kind of arrogance and rebellion. It encourages cultivating humility instead.
So, considering the long-term impact of our choices, ethically and spiritually.
Yes. And closely related is the idea of obedience and calling. Jehu acted decisively on the command he received. Now, the specific command is unique to that context, but the principle of acting on conviction on what we believe is right or what we feel called to do.
That has relevance. Acting decisively on our values.
I think so. It prompts us to ask, what are our core beliefs? And are we living them out with conviction, especially when it comes to matters of justice or righteousness as we understand them? That kind of alignment can definitely deepen faith.
It moves from just believing something to actually doing something about it.
Precisely. It's about aligning actions with deeply held values.
So, summing up this deep dive into 2 Kings 9, we've seen this intense story about God's justice, his use of complex individuals, the serious consequences of pride and wickedness, and the call to obedience and conviction.
Themes that, despite the ancient setting, still give us a lot to think about regarding faith, accountability, and how we live.
Definitely. So here's a final thought to leave with you. How does grappling with this ancient picture of divine justice, even with its harshness, shape how you view justice and accountability in our world today? And maybe more personally, what values or principles in your own life might require a bit more of Jehu's, perhaps, decisiveness and conviction, something to mull over? Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.